For some strange reason, the main character, Lest Albion, has been reborn inside the game he used to play over and over again. In this world, Lest is known as a corrupt noble, and his fate is sealed. He's supposed to die halfway through the story. At first, Lest lived a pretty normal life in this new world, with no memory of his past. But that changed when he turned 14, during a sacred ritual called the Divine Oracle Ceremony. It's a tradition where teens are given a skill by the goddess. That's when Lest's old memories came flooding back. The goddess gave him a skill called Tame, a power people look down on, since it can only control weak creatures like pigeons or horses. When his father found out, he was furious. The Albion family has a proud legacy of raising legendary warriors, so his father had hoped Lest would get something powerful, like Sword Saint or another strong combat skill. Instead, with Lest receiving what's seen as a useless ability, his father quickly cast him aside, saying he wasn't fit to carry the Albion name. Even Lest's older brother joined in, mocking him and calling him worthless for the skill he got. With both of Lest's older brothers competing to become the next heir, they were actually pleased. Having a weak younger sibling made their rivalry much easier. Seeing how coldly Lest's family reacted to the news, the priest tried to comfort him, encouraging Lest not to let it weigh him down. The priest believed there had to be a deeper meaning behind the goddess giving him that skill. In that moment, Lest suddenly remembered he was now living inside Symphonia of Sword and Sorcery, the game he used to play non-stop in his past life. What shocked him most was that he hadn't been reborn as the main hero, but instead as the story's villain. That meant, if things went the same way as the game, he would be killed midway through the plot by one of the Demon King's army commanders. Being a dedicated player who had explored every ending, Lest knew that no matter what path he followed, his death was guaranteed. After the Divine Oracle ceremony ended, Lest started analyzing the game's events, starting with his so-called useless skill, Tame. In the game, Tame was known for handling animals like cows or birds, so most saw it as weak. But Lest remembered the hidden truth: it wasn't just for livestock. The skill could also be used to control monsters. In the original game, Lest didn't figure out who he truly was until it was already too late. Years of being mistreated had already darkened his heart, and he ended up using Tame to harm others. His growing power drew the attention of the Demon King's army, and eventually, they stole his ability and killed him. Knowing all this now, Lest realizes that even if he tries his best to change his fate, as long as he holds on to that skill, the Demon King's forces will eventually come for him. That thought leaves him wondering how he can avoid that doomed ending. Using everything he knows from the game, Lest decides to grow stronger and take control of the kingdom on his own. Since the main story won't begin for another year, he plans to use that time to prepare for the worst. But first, he has to survive the cruel environment at home. One evening during dinner, his twin brothers, Edward and Sidward, proudly showed off in front of their father, Marquis Gad Albion, clearly trying to win his approval. Their mother, watching the two boys with pride, couldn't hide her joy, but when her eyes landed on Lest, she coldly called him a failure because of what she saw as a worthless skill. His brothers jumped in right after, mocking him by saying that if he'd been born into a livestock keeper's family, then his skill might have actually been useful. Lest, who was quietly keeping to himself, finally tried to speak up. But his father quickly cut him off, making it clear he didn't care what Lest had to say. Feeling cornered by his own family's harsh words, Lest stood up and left the table, choosing to go for a walk instead. It had been a full week since his old memories came back, and he was slowly starting to connect the dots. Sadly, he couldn't check his stats like players could in the game. But the more he adjusted to this world, the more he noticed that the rules were still pretty similar, like how defeating monsters helped players grow stronger. Realizing this, Lest knew that to level up, he had to train and take down as many monsters as possible. In the game, there was a condition: he could only tame monsters that he personally defeated. So, if he wanted to control powerful ones, he'd first have to raise his own stats high enough to beat them. One reliable method to do that came from the game itself, a daily routine known as midnight training, or as most players called it, the midnight grind. In the game, players could pick from 5 different training types each day, each one boosting a certain stat. But here in the real world, Lest isn't limited to midnight or just one training session. As long as he does every kind daily, he's sure he can grow stronger at an incredible speed. But building up his body isn't enough. He also plans to improve his magic. Using the memories of the Lest who lived in this world until now, he was able to complete his first magic refinement without trouble. His physical strength was already better than average too, proving how hard the original Lest must have been pushing himself. That surprised him, since in the game, Lest always seemed like a lazy character. Maybe getting stuck with the tame skill filled him with frustration and drove him to change. After wrapping up his usual training, Les started heading back to the mansion to rest. But on his way home, he bumped into his two older brothers, who were heading off for sword practice. Like always, they mocked him and made him feel like he didn't belong. Edward, who had the great sword wielder's skill, and Sidward, with his swordsman's skill, both clearly thought they were far above their younger brother and didn't hide it. While the twins were talking, a girl suddenly appeared, leaving the maids, Les, and even the brothers stunned. Out of nowhere, she had dragged a massive earth dragon into the field, and casually told the twins that she had taken it down herself on her way there. Her name was Elna Lebrisel, and she was the personal trainer of Les's brothers. Even though she was just 18, she already held the title of S-rank adventurer, and was known across the land as a genius with the sword. But strangely, Les didn't remember her from the game at all. He only knew about her through the memories of the Les who had grown up in this world. While S-rank adventurers weren't rare in the game, seeing one in real life felt intense and hard to believe. Watching Elna in action, Les felt a wave of envy and disappointment, wishing he could be trained by someone like her too. 2 hours later, in the Albion family's massive training hall, Elna was putting the twins through a brutal session. Les quietly hid and watched, eager to see more of her skill. Just like he thought, she was insanely strong. What shocked him most was how easily she handled both brothers, even though they had powerful sword-based skills. She treated them like little kids, and in the end, they gave up from sheer exhaustion. Watching all of this, Les knew that while training could raise his stats, it wouldn't teach him real combat techniques. And since Elna only came to the Albion estate once a month for sword training, he couldn't afford to waste the opportunity. He had to ask her to train him too. But before he could even approach her, Elna had already noticed him. Without him realizing, she moved behind him like a shadow. Surprised, Les quickly introduced himself, and Elna immediately recognized who he was. After witnessing how she pushed his brothers so hard, Les, though a bit nervous, gathered the courage to say he wanted to become strong too, and asked her to teach him how to wield a sword. Still, he felt the need to explain that Tame wasn't really meant for fighting, which was probably why he hadn't been picked for her training. Elna agreed, saying that without a sword-type skill, there was no way he could survive her intense routine anyway. But Les didn't back down. The determination in his eyes made it clear he truly wanted to grow. Seeing that, Elna had no choice but to give him a chance. In the blink of an eye, she tossed him a wooden sword ready to test what he could do. Elna wanted to see if Les was even worth her time, and to prove himself, he had to fight using his own strength. Her movements were quick like lightning, and every blow she delivered was heavy, showing just how far above him she really was. Even though it was clear she was holding back, Les knew that if he let his guard down even for a second, he'd be knocked out cold. No matter how hard he tried, Elna's power was simply beyond anything he could match. They had been fighting for over 10 minutes, and Les's legs were barely keeping him upright. Seeing how drained he was, Elna finally decided to end the match. Right away, Les asked her for feedback. Elna didn't hold back. She told him he still had a long way to go. His body just barely met the minimum standards, and when it came to sword fighting, he was basically starting from scratch. Still, she was curious. What was driving him to chase such strength? Was it to become a great swordsman, to surpass his brothers, or something else entirely? With firm resolve, Les answered with no hesitation he wanted to fight and defeat fate itself. Elna was taken aback. She'd never seen that kind of determination in any of her students before. So, she agreed to give Les 30 minutes of training each time she visited. Once she was finished with the other two, she'd spend that time coaching him as well. But she warned him clearly, if she ever caught him slacking off, not even a little, she'd stop right then and there. Les quickly promised her that would never happen. Since Elna wouldn't return for at least a month, he knew he'd have to keep training hard on his own to get stronger before their next session. Fast forward 2 months, and it's now Les's third day of training with Elna. At first, she assumed he hadn't made much progress. His movements still looked too easy to read. But then, to her surprise, Les showed her a technique she'd never seen from any of her other students. In the game, techniques were just as important as skills, maybe even more so. They were like final attacks that helped push past human limits. Over the last 2 months, Les had managed to learn one of them. It was a single strike move that boosted his sword's speed and strength, and he named it Blade Surge Full Drive, Flash Step. For the first time in her teaching life, Elna felt someone come close, truly close to landing a hit on her. Even though Les's attack was fast, Elna was still much stronger. She blocked it with ease. Les looked frustrated, feeling like all his hard work over the past few months wasn't enough. But while he was doubting himself, Elna stood there in silent shock, amazed by how far he'd come. The fact that he had only been learning swordsmanship for 2 months, and was already matching the level of his brothers who had been training for 6 is nothing short of incredible. It was clear that Lest had pushed himself to the limit, pouring everything into his training. But even that alone couldn't fully explain this progress. On top of that, the flash step technique he used earlier was something designed for people with actual sword-type skills. For someone without a combat class, even with natural talent, it should have taken a full year to learn. And yet, Lest had mastered it in just 2 months. That made Elna wonder if she had stumbled across something special, maybe even a once-in-a-generation talent. Meanwhile, Lest, still a little down because he hadn't landed a single hit on her, also felt thankful. Thanks to Elna, he had come a long way. So far, everything had been going better than he expected. Lest believed that as long as he stayed away from the main character and others who'd become his enemies, he could escape his doomed fate. But one night, their father, the Marquis, gave him unexpected news Charlotte, the second princess, was coming to visit their estate. Lest quickly tried to recall who she was. Then it hit him Charlotte was the main heroine in the game. She was the second princess of the Finale Kingdom, and a walking death flag for Lest. If he had to sum her up in one phrase, it would be, the perfect princess. Like many young royals, she had a deep curiosity about the world and easily made friends with anyone. She had a kind heart and treated everyone with respect, no matter their status. Even with all her talent, she stayed humble and trained hard to defend her people. But it was exactly because of her strong sense of justice that she couldn't overlook the things Lest did in the original story. When Lest lost control of his power and hurt others, Charlotte joined the hero to stop him. That battle led to Lest's death cut down by a high-ranking Demon Lord commander. According to the game's original story, there shouldn't have been any interaction between Lest and Charlotte at this stage. So, he couldn't help but wonder why had the plot suddenly changed. As it turns out, Elna also served as the sword instructor for the royal family, and she happened to mention a talented young swordsman from the Albion household to her highness. Curious and impressed, Charlotte decided to meet this person herself. Believing it must be one of the twins, the Marquis and his wife were thrilled, thinking their sons had caught the princess's eye. But what they didn't realize was that Charlotte was actually interested in Lest. Realizing his actions may have shifted the game's storyline, Lest quickly tried to figure out a way to correct it. 2 weeks later, the day of Charlotte's official visit finally came. Lest and his brothers waited together to greet her. But the twins, full of confidence, told Lest to stay out of their way, certain the princess had come to see them. Lest didn't argue, he simply stepped aside and left. While his brothers tried to impress Charlotte, Lest decided to make use of the free time by heading out to hunt monsters. The Arst Forest, a wild monster zone, stretched across Albion land and was perfect for training. The Albion family has strict rules. No one is allowed to enter the Arst Forest until they're officially enrolled in the Royal Academy. Not wanting to draw too much attention just yet, Lest decided to hold off on his plan for now. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the princess had finally arrived, and the twins, along with the Marquis, were having a tea party with her. The twins were captivated not only by Charlotte's beauty, but also by her special skill, Holy Sword Princess. It was a top-tier ability that gave powerful boosts to both holy magic and sword skills, stronger even than their older brother's sword technique at the academy. When Charlotte asked if she could watch them spar, the twins eagerly agreed. But to their surprise, Charlotte didn't seem all that impressed. Their techniques weren't bad, but they weren't anything special to her. Realizing this, the twins quickly panicked and tried to come up with a way to win back her interest. Without thinking about the risks, they made a reckless decision they would show her real combat by fighting monsters in the Arst Forest. Hearing this, Charlotte was visibly shocked. From what she had seen, their skills didn't seem strong enough for a dangerous place like that. Still full of overconfidence, the boys quickly reassured the princess that they could handle it. Charlotte hesitated, unsure whether she should allow them to go. But with the twins sounding so certain, she felt she had no choice but to follow along and see for herself. A short while later, the twins, Princess Charlotte, and her personal aide stepped into the forest. Fear showed clearly in Charlotte's eyes, and she even began to sweat slightly. Even though it was still daytime, the forest was dim and eerie, but despite the atmosphere, the boys smiled and told her not to worry, they had everything under control. While they explored, Charlotte suddenly remembered that the twins had another sibling who was in the same school year as her. Curious, she asked where Lest was. The brothers exchanged a quick look and gave her an awkward smile. Then they lied, telling her that Lest had gone off on his own somewhere. They figured Charlotte wouldn't be interested in meeting someone with a skill as weak as Tame. But just as they were talking, a Grey Wolf, an E-rank monster, leapt out from the shadows and launched a surprise attack on the group. Luckily, the twins were quick to react and took down the threat without much trouble. But even with that small victory, it was becoming clear to Princess Charlotte that the twins' skills weren't as impressive as she'd expected. At the same time, Estella, Charlotte's personal assistant, sensed something off. Her expression changed, and she quietly suggested that they should leave the forest right away. Puzzled, Charlotte asked why. Estella explained that she felt something dangerous was closing in and didn't think it was safe to stay any longer. Still desperate to prove themselves, the twins insisted they remain. That's when a stronger threat suddenly appeared: a Gale wolf, ranked C, much more dangerous than the one before. The monster lunged forward with incredible speed, and Estella quickly stepped in, blocking the first blow to protect the group. Without hesitation, she told the twins to take Charlotte and run, which they did. But as they tried to escape, another wolf appeared out of nowhere and blocked their path, trapping them. With no other choice, Charlotte was forced to use her magic, while the twins struggled just to land a single hit. Even with her powerful spells, the Gale wolf's sheer strength began to overwhelm her, slowly wearing her down and putting her in serious danger. Just as the beast was about to deliver a deadly strike, help arrived. Lest jumped in, blocking the monster's attack completely and saving the princess's life. A few minutes earlier, Lest had spotted Princess Charlotte and her maid Estella heading into the Arst forest with his brothers. Without wasting a second, he rushed after them, fully aware of how dangerous the Forbidden Forest could be. Realizing that his brothers were likely doing all this to impress the princess, Lest didn't even pause. He sprinted as fast as he could, determined to reach them in time. As the group made their way through the forest, Lest stayed hidden, watching them from the shadows, moving silently between trees. Most monsters here were low-ranked, and the twins could handle those. But if they happened to run into something powerful and Charlotte ended up hurt, or worse, her death could mean execution for the entire Albion family. So just to be sure, Les chose to follow them no matter what. And his instincts were right. In the present moment, he stepped forward just in time to protect Charlotte from being struck down. It was a dangerously close call. Even Les nearly got killed, but he felt relieved. If he had been just a second later, the princess could have been seriously hurt. When Lest suddenly appeared, Charlotte was surprised to see an unfamiliar face and quickly asked who he was. That's when Lest realized he hadn't introduced himself to her yet, even though he'd hoped to avoid this meeting for as long as possible. But thanks to his reckless brothers, he was now stuck in the middle of it. Even so, Lest still wanted to keep his identity a secret for now. So instead of saying his name, he simply replied that he was just a regular passerby. Charlotte, however, didn't buy it. There was no way a normal person would be wandering around such a dangerous place. She clearly had a lot more questions, but Lest cut her off, saying they could talk later. He still had a beast to deal with. Charlotte understood and gave him space to fight. The Gale wolf Lest now faced was a C-rank monster that could control wind magic, making it especially hard to deal with. Even with all his training, Lest knew that if he fought it head-on, he probably only had a 40 to 50% chance of winning. Still, he chose to stay hopeful, believing that with the knowledge he had from the game, he might just be able to pull off a win. As the monster lunged forward, Lest managed to dodge just in time, instantly placing himself in front of the princess to shield her from harm. But the fight wasn't going in his favor. He was clearly struggling. The Gale wolf's attacks came in a variety of forms, leaving almost no opening to strike back. Whether it attacked from a distance or up close, Lest had a hard time finding the right moment to counter. This wasn't surprising. After all, Gale wolves were known for their perfect balance of offense and defense, making them a nightmare to deal with. But what would overwhelm a normal person in this world was a different story for Lest. Thanks to his deep knowledge as a hardcore player of the game, he had already memorized this monster's patterns. Using that advantage, he managed to land a solid hit, something that left Charlotte watching in shock. She couldn't help but wonder just who this mysterious fighter really was. Although the Gale wolf's strength and sword technique weren't far off from her own, Lest kept striking it again and again with ease, even more than she ever could. As she watched him fight, her mind went back to the countless hours she spent training with Elna. Ever since she earned the title of Holy Sword Princess, Charlotte had pushed herself harder than anyone. She always knew there were people out there who surpassed her in magic or swordsmanship, but seeing it in front of her eyes made it real. Even with her title as the Holy Sword Princess, Charlotte never wanted to grow complacent. She trained relentlessly, determined not to fall behind those with greater skills or talent. Seeing her dedication always brought a smile to Elna's face. But as her mentor, Elna also reminded Charlotte that not every rival comes with flashy skills or high-ranking titles. Some, she said, were different. That's when she brought up Lest. Elna spoke of a boy, someone not gifted with powerful skills, yet driven enough to rise on pure talent and hard work alone. A boy whose strength, she claimed, could rival even Charlotte's. She explained that he was part of the Albion family and the same age as the princess. Charlotte hadn't planned to visit the Albion estate, but hearing Elna speak so highly of this boy stirred something in her. It wasn't just curiosity, it was admiration, and maybe a spark of challenge too. So when Elna encouraged her to meet him, Charlotte agreed. And now, back in the present, watching this mysterious boy go head-to-head with a powerful monster, it all clicked. His movements, his power, his grit, Charlotte knew instantly. This had to be the boy Elna spoke of. This was less the so-called useless skill holder everyone looked down on, and yet, he was anything but useless. Even though his skill is just tame, Lest shows a kind of strength that breaks all expectations. It's hard to believe, but Charlotte now knows for sure this is the boy Elna spoke so highly of. While Charlotte stands there amazed by his abilities, Lest remains focused on ending the battle, especially now that the monster has run out of magic. He knows this is his best shot to finish things. So when the beast suddenly shifts its attention and lunges at Charlotte, Lest reacts instantly, striking its head with full force and killing it using his signature move One Flash. A fight like this would have been intense for most people, but Lest handled it so effortlessly that even Charlotte, one of the most powerful fighters in the kingdom, was left stunned. But instead of celebrating, Lest stays serious. He knows that for someone with a skill like his, the real challenge starts after the battle is over. Now that the Gale Wolf is down, Charlotte walks over to thank him for saving her. Lest is caught off guard when she says his name. He never expected the princess to know who he was. And when he asks how she knows, Charlotte avoids giving a direct answer. Instead of answering directly, Charlotte points out that she's holding the same kind of wooden sword as Lest, the one Elna personally gave to each of her students. To properly introduce herself, she formally reveals that she's the princess of the Finale Kingdom and shares that she, too, is being trained under the same swordmaster. Despite her royal status, Charlotte doesn't hesitate to bow before Lest, sincerely thanking him for standing his ground and protecting her until the very end. She even admits that his courage and skill with a sword deeply impressed her, though Lest tries to downplay the situation, treating it like it was nothing special. The princess keeps expressing her heartfelt thanks. Her warm, beaming smile catches him off guard and leaves him slightly flustered. Not wanting her to notice his reddening face, Lest quickly excuses himself, saying he needs to check on the Gale Wolf. Before leaving, he asks Charlotte if she can keep an eye on his brothers for the time being, and she agrees without hesitation. Now that she's momentarily out of the picture, Lest walks up to the massive creature. It's easily 20 times his size. Since everything has gone according to plan so far, all that remains is to find out whether this beast is willing to become his companion. As Lest glanced at his status panel, he was taken aback to see that the Gale Wolf had not only acknowledged his strength, but had also expressed a willingness to serve him. So when the system prompted him to confirm the taming, Lest didn't hesitate. He instantly hit yes. Thrilled by the fact that this was the first monster he'd ever tamed, Lest gently ran his hand through its fur, feeling a strange connection form between them. Moments later, the system confirmed. The taming was successful, and a portion of the beast's power had now been transferred to him. That meant Lest had just gained access to wind magic. As if that wasn't enough, he also unlocked a new reward: interdimensional sanctuary granted only upon a tamer's first successful bond. With mana now coursing through his body, Lest could feel his strength rising, and the excitement building inside him was hard to contain. In that moment, he finally understood why the Lest from the original game believed he could reach the pinnacle of power. The skill tame didn't just allow him to control monsters, it let him absorb their strengths. Not only would he gain their heightened physical abilities, but if a creature had a unique skill, he'd be able to use it as well. In this case, that meant Lest now wielded the wind magic of the very monster he had just defeated. In the original game, Lest let his power consume him and ended up meeting a tragic downfall. He lost everything. But now, he's not that same person. Determined to change his fate, Lest pushed himself through harsh training, asked Elna for guidance, and steadily sharpened his swordsmanship. He didn't do all that just to throw it away. That's why he set his sights on taming even more monsters. The more creatures he tames, the more powerful he becomes. And if he keeps going like this, Lest is confident he can someday become the strongest in the world. With the Gale Wolf now officially under his control, Lest decided it was only right to give it a name. Wanting to keep it simple, he settled on Gale as the creature's nickname. Since it's definitely not normal to have such a powerful beast as a pet, Lest thought it would be best to keep Gale's existence a secret. So, to try out his new ability, he used interdimensional sanctuary to hide Gale safely away for now. Not long after, Estella came rushing onto the scene, clearly worried about the princess's safety. Charlotte, who had returned to the twins' side, greeted her with a smile and casually mentioned that another Gale Wolf had appeared, but they managed to drive it off. Estella was stunned. She quickly asked if Charlotte had fought the beast herself or if the twins had protected her. With pride, Charlotte replied that it was Lest who came to her rescue, leaving Stella completely speechless. Stella found it hard to believe what she had just heard. After all, Lest was known for having a skill that most considered useless. But Charlotte firmly told her that she saw everything with her own eyes, there was no mistake. With the secret already out, Lest admitted that it really was him. He explained that the fight had been tough, but in the end, he managed to drive the monster away. Hearing this, Stella was deeply grateful and said she'd like to thank him properly once things had calmed down. This moment made Lest realize he had to be more cautious when interacting with characters from the game world. One wrong step could cause serious trouble. But for now, he simply guided the two girls and brought his brothers out of the forest before anything else could go wrong. When they returned to the mansion, they were met with worried faces. Nearly every maid in the household looked alarmed, wondering where the boys and the princess had disappeared to from the training grounds. Before giving them an explanation, Lest quickly told everyone to tend to the princess's injuries first. At once, the staff rushed off to bring medicine, towels, and water to help care for her. Meanwhile, when the Marquis noticed that Lest was the only one who came back without a scratch, he immediately began accusing him, demanding to know if he had something to do with the other's condition. But before Lest could respond, the princess stepped in and defended him, firmly telling the Marquis that Lest didn't do anything wrong. In fact, he was the one who saved her life. This left the Marquis stunned. He had never imagined that his least favored child would be capable of such a feat. To help clear things up, Stella stepped forward and explained the full story. She told the Marquis that she and the princess had been led into the Arst forest by the twins, who confidently claimed they visited the area regularly. However, things took a dangerous turn when they encountered not one, but two C-rank Gale wolves. Hearing this, the Marquis was completely shocked. That his beloved sons would lead the princess into such danger was hard for him to believe. Stella, maintaining a serious tone, asked if the Marquis had actually given his children permission to enter such a perilous place. The Marquis quickly denied it, insisting he would never allow something like that. He added that his sons must have entered the forest without his knowledge. If this was true, and the princess had been put in danger, Stella firmly pointed out that the responsibility fell on the Marquis as the head of the house. This made him instantly nervous, fearing punishment from the king for his son's reckless actions. But to avoid further trouble, Charlotte stepped in and chose not to make things more complicated. She also acknowledged that they were partly at fault for trusting the twins so easily and didn't intend to blame the Marquis alone. More importantly, since Lest single-handedly drove off the Gale wolf and saved her life, she was willing to let the matter go. Hearing the full story, the Marquis found it hard to believe Lest could defeat such a creature alone. Frustrated and confused, he turned to his son, who avoided his gaze. After everything that happened, Charlotte asked the Marquis to show them to their rooms so they could finally rest. Before leaving, she spoke to Lest once more, saying she wanted to thank him properly another time. As the princess retired to her room, the Marquis was left alone, still struggling to grasp how his worthless son could have possibly defeated a Gale wolf. It seemed far too unbelievable. Meanwhile, Charlotte and her companion stayed the night at the mansion. That same night, Lest, unable to sleep, found himself replaying the day's events over and over in his head. Eventually, he decided to go outside for some late-night training. But on his way out, he unexpectedly ran into Charlotte, who looked stunning in a white nightgown. Seeing Lest made Charlotte light up with joy, and now that they were finally alone, she took the chance to speak with him. Once again, she sincerely thanked him, admitting that had he not rushed over, she likely would have lost her life. Lest gently told her to raise her head, saying it wasn't right for a princess to bow to someone like him. He simply expressed his relief that she was safe, a gesture that left Charlotte deeply moved. She then shared how impressed she was that he managed to fend off the Gale wolf alone. His swordsmanship had left a lasting impression, and Charlotte concluded that Lest's incredible strength came not from his skill, but from who he truly was. The two began trading compliments, and before long, both of them were blushing from the unexpected praise. But behind the playful tone, Charlotte opened up to Lest, admitting that the whole experience had shown her she still had much to learn. Having made up her mind, she suddenly asked Lest something. Her cheeks reddened, and the way she smiled made Lest's heart race. Then, she asked him to be her sword friend. Lest looked confused, so Charlotte explained she wanted someone who shared her passion for swordsmanship and had the same goals. Still unsure how to respond, Lest gave a slightly awkward reaction. To make it even more surprising, Charlotte added that she hoped to make him her rival, someone she could compete with to grow stronger together. But her cheerful tone faded for a moment as she admitted something deeper. Her training had felt stuck for a while. Up until now, her only goal was to catch up to Lady Elna. But Elna was too far ahead, always out of reach. No matter how hard Charlotte tried, she couldn't even see her back. But Lest, who was the same age and always just one step ahead, felt within reach. With him, she saw a real chance to push herself and grow stronger side by side. Charlotte felt sure that with Lest by her side, she'd definitely grow stronger. That's why, with him as her partner, she believed she could keep improving. Meanwhile, Lest found himself caught in doubt, unsure if he should accept her request. Ever since he remembered his past life, he had promised himself not to get too involved with the game's main characters. But no matter what he did, fate kept pushing him toward them. Eventually, he gave in, especially since Charlotte was so persistent. And honestly, could he really say no to a princess? Once he finally agreed, Charlotte lit up with joy, clearly happy to become friends with him. Surprisingly, Lest also felt a bit excited about it, even though it wasn't something he ever thought would happen. Since they were now sword partners, Charlotte suddenly had a wild idea. She asked Lest to call her by her nickname, Chero. This left Lest totally stunned. To him, it felt way too casual, especially with how different their social ranks were. Charlotte didn't hesitate to scold Lest, firmly saying that she doesn't care what others think. If she says something is fine, then that's all that matters. Thinking back, Lest realized that Charlotte had always been this stubborn in the game. Once she made a decision, she never backed down. So with no room to argue, Lest gave in and agreed to speak more casually, just as she wanted. And just like that, the very person Lest had tried to avoid all this time had now become someone close. Still, he couldn't help but wonder, will this new connection help him, or just bring more problems his way? The next morning, it was finally time for Charlotte to return to the palace. Before leaving, she made sure to personally say goodbye to everyone in the mansion. As the carriage rolled off toward the royal capital, the Marquis couldn't help but feel irritated that of all people, it was Lest who caught the princess's attention. Making things worse, he lashed out at his twin sons for nearly dragging the Albion family into trouble. However, their mother quickly stepped in, reminding the Marquis that while their actions had put Charlotte at risk, they were only following his orders to win the princess's favor. But the Marquis just couldn't wrap his head around it or accept it. And to make things worse, because of his twin sons, the princess had taken interest in their so-called useless son, Lest. Hearing all this made Lest feel uneasy and annoyed. He never thought his family would make such a fuss about something like this. At the same time, the twins began defending themselves. They told their father that the only reason Her Highness showed interest in Lest was because she had been misled. They refused to believe Lest had taken down a Gale wolf alone. But since the princess clearly said she saw it with her own eyes, the Marquis had no choice but to hold back his doubts. Still wanting to shift the spotlight, the twins then claimed that they had already injured the Gale wolf before losing consciousness, trying to make it look like Lest just finished it off. They also accused him of using the confusion to trick the princess, calling it an unforgivable act. And since the Marquis still didn't want to accept the truth, he forced himself to believe their claim, even though it made no real sense, leaving Lest staring at them in silence, full of anger and disappointment. In the back of Lest's mind, he knew Edward and the others had attacked the Gale wolf, but their strikes had no real weight and didn't deal any damage. Lest was certain that it was his own efforts that led to the wolf's defeat, and this time, he wasn't going to let his brothers steal the credit. Still, the Marquis wouldn't even give him a chance to speak and just told him to stop talking nonsense. But Lest wasn't about to let his family trample over him again. His determination to prove the truth shocked his father, who had never seen him so serious before. So, to test if Lest really was strong enough to take down the Gale wolf, the Marquis ordered him to face both Edward and Sidward at once and beat them to prove his claim. Since neither of the twins had managed to defeat the wolf before, it only made sense that if Lest was telling the truth, beating both should be easy. Upon hearing this, the twins grew excited. They were confident they could crush their brother quickly. And while a 2-on-1 fight went against proper rules, the twins claimed even the goddess would approve if it meant exposing their foolish brother's lies. At this point, if Edward and Sidward are free to use their full strength, then they're strong enough to not be easily beaten by a Gale wolf. On their own, they're almost just as skilled as Lest. But if he had to face them both together, he knew he wouldn't be able to win. That might have been true yesterday. But now that he's managed to tame the Gale wolf and unlock this new power, things are different. With this in mind, Lest feels certain he can beat his brothers easily. His sudden confidence left everyone in the room surprised. Just before the match could begin, someone unexpected showed up. Elna herself came forward and said she would serve as the witness to the brothers' duel. Even the Marquis was taken aback, as he didn't expect Lady Elna to appear now, especially with time left before the next training. Elna quickly explained that she heard from Stella about how her students had been attacked by a gale wolf and was relieved they had survived. She couldn't just stay put, so she came over to check on them and walked in right when she overheard that her students were preparing for a duel. Since Elna was already present, she chose to take on the role of official witness for the upcoming fight. When she referred to all 3 boys as her students, the Marquise suddenly understood that Lest had also been receiving her guidance, not just Edward and Sidward. Calmly, Elna explained that she agreed to train Lest only because he strongly requested it. Since that moment, she had quietly been overseeing his progress. The twins and the Marquis were clearly shocked after hearing this. With a firm look on her face, Elna explained that her choice was personal and that she hadn't trained Lest nearly as much as she had the other 2. She added that, even knowing all that, she didn't think Lest stood much of a chance against his brothers. That's why she was curious about the source of his sudden boldness. Her words gave the Marquis a bit of relief, hoping Lest wasn't as gifted as Charlotte seemed to believe. But Lest was sure that Elna had seen his growth and knew well he wasn't the type to boast unless he truly had something to show for it. Realizing that Elna was testing him, Lest made up his mind to prove not just his strength to his family, but also his worth to his teacher. So, as the duel was about to begin, he calmly stepped into position. When the twins saw the wooden sword in his hands, they instantly understood he was indeed being trained by Elna. Still, unlike Lest, who only had a wooden blade, the twins were holding weapons meant for actual combat. That made Lest feel a little uneasy, but also curious about what his brothers were truly thinking. The reason Lest felt so sure he could beat both of them was the new strength he gained from taming. With his body now stronger and access to wind magic, he had some confidence he could win. Even so, Lest didn't plan to use wind magic during the fight. More than anything, he didn't want anyone discovering the full power of taming yet, since that could bring more problems his way. Besides, wind magic wasn't the only special ability he now had. He believed more power would come to him in time. Just then, the match officially started. Wasting no time, the twins rushed in to attack, thinking they could take down Lest without much effort. There's no denying that Edward and Sidward were both fast and strong, but Lest's speed and reflexes had improved just as much. The twins were stunned. This was the first time they saw their younger brother move like this. They didn't expect Lest to block all of their attacks so easily. Realizing that they couldn't beat him one-on-one, the two started to work together more seriously. When one of them spotted an opening, Edward quickly tried to end the fight with a single, powerful blow. He thought Lest wouldn't be able to stop a steel greatsword using just a wooden one. But instead of panicking, Lest saw this as the perfect moment to use his secret move, Magic Infusion. Because of this skill, he managed to block the heavy strike. Edward was stunned. He couldn't believe what had just happened and immediately asked Lest what he did. Without hesitation, Lest answered honestly. He explained that it was a special technique known as Magic Infusion, an advanced type of mana control. By filling the smallest gaps in an object with magic, its durability increases a lot. But for someone like Edward, who only knew how to swing a sword without thinking, the concept probably sounded confusing. Hearing Lest talk like that made Edward furious. In the game Lest played in his past life, Magic Infusion was a top-tier skill mainly used by frontline fighters. It was known for being both strong and flexible, but also very hard to learn. To pull it off, a person needed not just a huge amount of magic power, but also sharp control over it. After spending every day training his magic since he got his memories back, Lest had finally gotten a good grip on the technique. And because taming the Gale Wolf gave his magic reserves a serious boost, he could now use it for real in battle. Along with that, taming also granted him another useful skill by letting magic flow through his entire body. He could level up his physical power even more. Now, Lest could activate both body strengthening and magic infusion at the same time. This gave him an edge in both raw strength and how well his weapon worked. His twin brothers couldn't believe what they were seeing. The same little brother they always ignored and made fun of was suddenly stronger than the both of them. After going all out for several minutes, Edward and Sidward were already breathing hard. Nothing they tried had worked. Now out of ideas and nearly out of energy, they were left wondering what to do next. But since they had already taken their best shot, it was finally time for Lest to show what he could really do. Without wasting any time, Lest launched his counterattack with full confidence. He even wore a small smile as he swung his wooden sword, surprising his brothers with every clean hit. When they thought they had found a gap to strike back, Lest easily avoided it, calling their move too predictable. Since their stance left them wide open, Lest didn't struggle at all to land a strong blow. As the match dragged on, the Marquis stood frozen, watching with disbelief. He couldn't understand how Lest, who only had the tame ability, was now fighting like this. Even their mother sat quietly, stunned and unable to accept what she was seeing. Elna, on the other hand, carefully studied every movement. She noticed that Lest's growth had already been incredible before, but the way he had improved just in the last month was simply unheard of. It was almost like something was hidden inside him, something even she couldn't fully grasp. Still, Elna knew Edward and Sidward hadn't yet shown all their cards either. Powerful skills, when used right, can easily crush the hard work of someone without them. If Lest couldn't find a way to overcome that gap, then this would be the limit of how far he could go. In this duel, Lest knows he has only two ways to win: either knock his opponents out cold or force them to give up. Between the two, knocking them out seems easier, but even if he wins with one clean strike, he suspects they'll still come up with ridiculous excuses later, just like they did with the Gale Wolf. So this time, Lest decides he has to make the difference between them so clear that no one can argue. As the battle heats up, Lest senses the tension rising. His brothers are growing more annoyed, shouting at him not to take them lightly. They keep throwing out excuses, saying they've just been going easy so far and that once they show their secret moves, he won't stand a chance. Soon after, the twins each reveal their unique skills, rockfall and high-speed dance. But Lest already saw this coming. He knows that just like him, they also have skills built around the weapons they use. Though Lest does have a counter skill called Flash Strike, it's pretty basic and not as strong or fast as their techniques. Right now, he clearly sees it. If things keep going like this, his brothers will overpower him with ease. It's a painful reminder of how huge the gap is between those trained for battle and someone like him without any flashy combat skills. Even though Lest didn't really want to reveal his other trump card just yet, he realized he had no choice. So, staying fully focused, he activated a special wind magic skill that wrapped his blade with wind vibrating at an ultra-fast pace. This powerful technique, which mimics an extremely sharp edge, is called Matoi-Kazutachi. With just one swing, Lest effortlessly sliced through his brother's weapon, leaving both his father and mother completely stunned. Seeing this, Edward and Sidward backed off in fear, shaken by what they had just witnessed. And with both of them surrendering, Elna calmly declared Lest as the winner of the duel. Their mother stood there in disbelief, unable to accept that a concubine's child like Lest had defeated her sons. Meanwhile, the Marquis stormed out in anger, unable to contain his frustration. The twins quickly followed after him, seemingly desperate to explain themselves. Once everyone else had gone, Elna approached Lest and praised him for what he accomplished. It's not that she ever doubted he'd beaten the Gale Wolf, but the way he handled the fight today had genuinely caught her off guard. Lest simply said he was glad he didn't embarrass himself in front of her as her student. But since Edward and Sidward were also her pupils, Elna couldn't help but laugh at his comment. Even so, Elna still hoped that this experience would push the twins to take their training more seriously. No matter how the match ended, she felt genuinely proud of Lest. Now that the duel was settled, she told Lest she had a few questions about the techniques he used, which instantly made him a bit anxious. But to his relief, she said she wouldn't press him too hard, though there was still one thing she wanted to ask. Just before Edward and Sidward unleashed their special moves, Elna had noticed a brief hesitation in Lest's stance. She asked if he had been thinking of using a different strategy instead of breaking their weapons. Now that she brought it up, Lest admitted that he had another option in mind. He could have avoided using Matoi-Kazutachi and instead tried to redirect the path of their attacks with his wooden sword. While not easy, it was something he felt confident he could pull off. But that plan had its risks. For one, since the idea depended on using his opponent's force against them, Lest figured Edward and Sidward would just brush it off and say he got lucky. Worse, they might have even gotten badly hurt if things went wrong. Even if it's normal in a fight, Lest still didn't want to deal with the mess if his brothers got hurt and started whining afterward. That's why, instead of risking more drama, he decided to end it by breaking their weapons using Matoi-Kazutachi. From the look on Elna's face, it was clear she figured that out too. Still, Lest had finally earned a certain level of respect in the Albion family. He knew, though, that without the Gale Wolf's help, he couldn't have pulled it off. Wanting to show his gratitude, Lest opened a portal to his interdimensional world and called for Gale. The wolf looked ready to leap out, but Lest quickly decided to enter the space himself to avoid any chaos. Once inside, he went straight to Gale and gave him a sincere thanks. After all, it was Gale's wind magic that helped him defeat his brothers. Even though the win was great, Lest reminded himself to stay focused on what's ahead. Just then, a notification panel suddenly appeared, alerting him that his current tame slot was full. If he wanted to tame another monster, he'd need to increase the limit. It didn't really surprise him. Lest had known all along that while tame was powerful, it also had strict limits. To add more beasts beyond Gale, he had no choice but to level up the skill. In the game he used to play, Lest remembered only ever taming 5 monsters in total. Each one was incredibly powerful, and having them made Lest stronger too. But once those monsters were taken down, he became weak quickly because he hadn't kept up with his own training. Determined not to make that same mistake here, Lest now plans to level up no matter what. Late night training helps improve his stats little by little, but to grow faster, he needs to fight monsters and earn real experience points. Now that he's tamed Gale, Lest's power has reached close to a B rank level, even though he's officially still a C rank. That's enough for him to handle most unexpected trouble on his own. Still, he knows the next step, he needs to enter the Arst Forest again. But given the current situation, there's no way his family would ever allow him to go back there. Even so, Lest already has his eyes set on the next monster he wants to tame, and that creature lives deep inside the Arst Forest. Then, unexpectedly, things took a positive turn the very next day, as his biggest problem seemed to fix itself. Meanwhile, the Marquis found himself reflecting. Just 3 months ago, during the Divine Oracle ceremony, Lest's gift had been revealed to be tame, a skill that seemed so out of place in the Albion family, which had produced generations of elite swordsmen. Back then, tame was considered a pathetic, bottom-tier skill completely useless in real battles. So, it was only natural that the Marquis saw it as a disgrace. Right after the Divine Oracle ceremony, he wasted no time in sending out official notices, declaring that Lest would no longer be considered as a potential heir to the family. In doing so, he wanted to show that, like a true lion, he wouldn't hesitate to cast aside his own blood if they didn't meet his standards. But things didn't go as he expected. Lest turned into a warrior strong enough to bring down a Gale wolf and even caught the attention of the kingdom's second princess. Now, the Marquis is left bitter and annoyed. Lest's rising fame makes his earlier decision seem like a huge blunder, something that must be avoided at all costs. Still, he keeps lying to himself, insisting he made the right call. After all, someone using a skill like Tame shouldn't be allowed to lead the mighty Albion bloodline. To protect his pride and avoid being shamed in front of others, the Marquis is now determined to prove that Lest is completely unworthy. He's even willing to erase Lest's place in the family both officially and permanently. On top of everything, it turns out that the Albion family also has an eldest son studying at the academy who was blessed with the powerful Sword Saint skill. To the Marquis, this means the family's legacy is still secure, as long as his firstborn proves to be strong. Even though he already plans to kick Lest out of the house, the fact that the second princess favors him makes things more complicated. But despite how heartless it might seem, the Marquis chooses to send Lest off to the Arst Forest again, secretly hoping that the monsters there will take care of the problem for him. What he didn't expect, though, is that for someone like Lest eager to get stronger fast, this is actually the best news he could get. Still, Lest can't help but question his father's reasoning. Why would he be allowed to go alone into such a dangerous place? The Marquis gave him a few reasons, but none of them sounded convincing. Deep down, Lest knows his father has hidden motives. But right now, it doesn't really matter. This is a rare chance, and Lest isn't about to waste it. He accepts the order and heads straight to the forest, determined to gain more experience and power while he can. In the game, Arst Forest was split into 3 zones: the shallow layer, the middle layer, and the deep layer. The part assigned to him this time was only the beginner zone, the shallow layer. Lest quickly realized that his father likely avoided sending him to the deeper parts too soon, since that would seem suspicious. The monsters here were weak, mostly lower E rank to mid D rank creatures. Still, with Gale by his side, Lest didn't mind taking on as many enemies as he could. One unusual feature of his tamed skill was that it didn't only boost his own abilities, it also powered up the monsters he tamed. Even better, the stronger he got, the higher the boost they received. Thanks to that, he had no trouble clearing out any monsters that came at him until a firebird suddenly appeared. It was a D rank upper monster. Since it was flying and his wooden sword couldn't reach, Lest figured it was the perfect moment to test his wind magic. Luckily, he handled it just as easily as he would with a sword, and defeated it quickly. As he leveled up, he felt a strange rush throughout his body. It was like his limbs had become lighter, something he hadn't even felt after fighting the Gale wolf just the other day. Interestingly, whenever Gale defeated a monster, the experience points would also go to Lest. Because of that, his level steadily increased without slowing down. At the same time, he kept practicing his wind magic, something hard to train at the mansion. As a result, Lest was getting stronger at an incredible rate. A full week had passed since he started the mission in the Arst Forest. Occasionally, tough monsters like the Gale wolf would show up, but he and Gale kept beating them so often that the enemies didn't pose a challenge anymore. If he wanted to keep leveling up, Lest figured he'd need to explore the deeper zones. But since he didn't have his father's permission, he began wondering if he should sneak in without saying anything. However, that same evening when he got home, his father suddenly told him that starting the next day, he'd be sent to investigate the deeper areas. Lest was stunned, since he hadn't expected his father to give such an order. Deep down, he suspected his father had grown impatient after seeing how easily he was handling the shallow layers. Still, Lest felt grateful. Once again, the timing of his father's decision was just right. Just to make sure, Lest asked his father directly if he truly meant to let him into the middle layers, where the monsters were clearly much stronger. Without showing the slightest hesitation, the Marquis confirmed it and even said it was because he had high hopes for him. But what the Marquis didn't realize was that he had unknowingly handed a gift to the son he cared the least about. As soon as morning came, Lest and Gale were eager to dive back into their training, this time in the forest's middle section. In the shallow areas, monsters were usually around lower E to middle D rank. But now, high C rank beasts would start showing up too. Even so, none of them were a real threat. Without even realizing it, Lest had managed to climb up to a B rank level thanks to the stronger enemies he'd been battling over the last few days. Another week slipped by as he kept gaining strength. Then one day, without any signs, a powerful monster showed up out of nowhere. It was a mid-B rank monster, one that had been a serious challenge even in the game. Wanting to defeat it as quickly as possible, Lest immediately called for Gale. Working together, and with Lest using his Wind Sever armor magic, they finally managed to land a solid blow. Just like in the game, the Cyclops began preparing its I-Beam, a powerful and dangerous special move. But Lest, who already knew the exact timing, could have easily dodged it. Still, instead of avoiding the blast, he boldly stood his ground, determined to take it head-on and counter it no matter what. He had only tried this kind of maneuver on weaker enemies before, but now, facing the Cyclops, he felt genuinely thrilled to put his skills to the test. And with a single well-placed strike, Lest brought down the huge beast. Since he finally met the required conditions, his level rose again, and with it, the ability to tame a second monster. That alone got Lest fired up, since he had been waiting for this chance. For days now, he had already made up his mind about his next target, one that lives in the forest's deepest zone. Although his father hasn't allowed him into that area yet, Lest couldn't help but question whether he even needed that permission. Still, since it had already been a long, exhausting day, he chose to return to the mansion for now. After all, he knew that tomorrow, he and Gale would face the strongest creature they've ever encountered, one spoken of in legends across the kingdom. The monster Lest planned to tame next was none other than a dragon. And so, the following day, even though his father hadn't officially granted him permission to enter the deepest part of the forest, Lest went ahead anyway. After cutting through the upper and middle zones for nearly an hour, he and Gale fought their way past B-rank monsters, steadily moving toward their true destination. Eventually, after countless battles, they arrived at the place Lest had been aiming for all along. Standing in a wide, open field, Lest waited eagerly, knowing the moment was close. Then suddenly, a fierce wind swept across the area his signal had arrived. Out from the ruins of an old, crumbling church soared a black dragon, its wings slicing the sky as it let out a deafening roar. But rather than feeling fear, Lest's eyes lit up with excitement. Facing such a powerful opponent thrilled him. What amazed him even more was that this creature, still in its youth, already radiated an aura that shook the entire forest. In the game, this was just 1/10 of its full size, and yet it was terrifying. Fully grown, it would reach over 100 meters and had the potential to self-destruct. In the game's storyline, the dragon was once taken over by a demon general, went berserk, and nearly reduced the capital to rubble. Its strength was so overwhelming that even the heroes of that world were crushed by it. Lest once remembered fearing that this very dragon could bring an end to the entire nation. But in the end, it managed to break free from the demon's control and chose instead to aid the people. With the last of its strength, it used its magic to heal the very towns it had once harmed. Then, just before its final breath, the dragon did something no one expected. It spoke. To everyone's astonishment, it revealed that its ancient bloodline once served as divine guardians of the realm. These legendary dragons had defended humanity for centuries, fending off hordes of demons and monstrous threats. That legacy lived within the Black Dragon, and more than anything, it wished to protect, not destroy. After sharing its story, the dragon quietly faded into an eternal rest, its final moments filled with solemn grace. Though the game had framed this as a fixed loss event, and many players moved on without much thought, Lest had never forgotten it. Even though the dragon only appeared once, its presence had left a deep mark on him. So when he found himself reincarnated as Lest in this world, the very first goal that came to mind was clear: to tame that dragon, no matter what. because in this new life, Lest was determined to rewrite fate. If he could make the dragon his ally, he might just prevent the tragedy that once unfolded in the original story. After 4 months of promising himself that he'd tame this beast, the day had finally arrived. But to do that, Lest had to win this battle with everything he had, because if he didn't, he knew he'd be the one lying dead. In this world, dragons hold massive magical power, called the Kings of Magic. They twist reality itself and grow quickly when fed magic, especially by demon generals reaching the terrifyingest rank. But since this one was still young, its level should only be around high B rank. With both his own power and Gale's combined, Lest believed they had a solid chance at victory. And so, the battle began as the dragon finally made its first move. Lest felt a bit tense, but both he and Gale were ready to show their true strength. Without any delay, they charged straight at the dragon. Lest used his Cyclone Blast technique, hoping they might at least catch it off guard. But shockingly, the creature batted it away with just a single flap of its wings. Still, Lest didn't let that shake him. He stayed hopeful and pushed forward again. As he and Gale kept pressing their attack, the dragon calmly began building up a spell, a huge one, pure destruction magic, and it was clearly preparing to unleash it. Even though the dragon's magic was deadly, Lest didn't feel a hint of fear. As someone who knew the game inside and out, he was well aware that if he simply dodged the attack, it wouldn't matter at all. So when he saw an opening, Lest used his wind magic to rise into the air, aiming to take the fight off the ground. With his body enhanced through magic and time spells, he managed to strike the legendary beast. The dragon roared in pain, and Lest quickly called for Gale to attack while it was stunned. But even Gale's strongest claws couldn't cut through the dragon's thick hide. As the black dragon rose back to its feet, Lest braced himself. The real battle was just beginning now. For several intense minutes, Lest and Gale poured everything they had into the fight. The fearsome black dragon, once forced from the skies, gave up trying to fly and focused all its strength on the ground instead. Lest knew that if he slipped up, even for a second, he'd lose instantly. Yet deep in the heart of that dangerous fight, something strange stirred inside him, an intense excitement unlike anything he had ever felt. To him, this battle wasn't just about survival anymore. He saw the dragon not as a mindless beast, but as if it were a mighty demon puppet, and this, to Lest, was a rare moment to fight with pride and honor. No matter how hard the challenge may be, Lest is determined not to let this chance slip through his fingers. The thrill of facing such a powerful enemy fills him with excitement, and without realizing it, his grip on the wooden sword tightens. With no fear in his heart, Lest is eager to meet the dragon head-on, partly because he craves this intense feeling more than ever. But more than anything, he wants to tame the black dragon and save it from the tragic end it faced before. That's why Lest is ready to give everything he has to claim victory. The dragon's attacks are wild and fierce, but each strike leaves it exposed. Because of that, dodging its blows isn't too difficult for Lest and Gale. Yet, something feels strange. Even though it's still young, this dragon really is a king among magical beasts. As the battle continues, Lest begins to realize something. The dragon hasn't been trying to hit them directly at all. It's almost like it wants them to notice something. And now, as they both freeze in place, Lest senses it. This next attack is different. If his guess is right, the black dragon is preparing to unleash its breath attack. This was the kind of attack Lest and Gale absolutely had to avoid. One mistake, and it could cost them their lives. But in that moment, something finally clicked for Lest. Taming a monster wasn't just about beating it in battle. It was about something deeper than just proving strength. As the black dragon unleashed its terrifying breath attack, Lest could only stand frozen, watching the blast race toward him. The heat alone was enough to scorch the air, but that wasn't what scared him the most. What truly shook him was the enormous amount of magic behind it. As the searing magic closed in, Lest couldn't help but question himself. Had he made a terrible mistake? Had he misjudged everything from the start? But just then, something unexpected happened. The breath didn't hurt him at all. No burns, no damage, nothing. The dragon's magic had done nothing to him. That's when it all made sense. The strange feeling Lest had during the earlier attacks wasn't just in his head. It was real. The dragon had never intended to harm them from the beginning. The breath attack had seemed deadly from the outside. But Lest's guess turned out to be right. It was only coated in powerful magic, while the core was empty. What looked like a full-force blast was, in truth, a test. Such precise control over magic is something only a being like the dragon hailed as the king of magic could possibly pull off. But that only raised a bigger question. What was the black dragon really trying to do from the start? Its actions had shown not just overwhelming power, but also deep wisdom and a sense of honor rooted in ancient traditions. It carried the pride of its ancestors, noble beings who once guarded this land with unwavering resolve. In the end, Lest didn't have to defeat the dragon in the way most would expect. Because this wasn't just a battle, it was a test. A test of character, of intention. The dragon, with all its memories of a time when its kin stood as protectors, simply didn't want its strength to fall into the wrong hands. It never meant to harm someone like Lest. And when Lest grasped that truth when he chose to respect the dragon's pride instead of trying to crush it, that's when everything changed. Understanding this, Lest didn't hesitate. With clear purpose in his voice, he told the dragon he had come not to dominate it, but to honor and protect its pride. And at that moment, something shifted. The great dragon, recognizing Lest's sincerity, slowly lowered its head in trust. Lest gently reached out, placing his hand against the dragon's nose. In that instant, the taming magic began to glow. And just like that, one of the most legendary creatures in existence was about to become his companion. As all of this unfolded, Lest could feel something awakening deep within him, his senses sharpening, his spirit lighting up. It almost felt unreal, like a dream. He had just tamed one of the most powerful creatures in existence. When the taming finally finished, a surge of energy flowed through him. This was the dragon's blessing, a special gift given to those who form a bond with a dragon. It granted him strong resistance to harmful status effects and, more importantly, advanced control over magic. Hearing that made Lest beam with excitement. In the game, the black dragon could shape magic into any form, turning it into storms, lightning, or even illusions. Now, with this blessing, he might be able to do the same one day. He had hoped to gain the dragon's concept interference skills, the power to twist reality itself, but Noir was still young and hadn't awakened those abilities yet. Still, Lest was confident. With time and growth, more of that legendary power would surely come his way. Just imagining the possibilities made his heart race. Realizing he couldn't keep calling the dragon just Black Dragon, Lest gave it a name, Noir. And to his surprise, the dragon let out a powerful roar, clearly pleased. Even Gale, usually so calm, was moved to tears by the moment. Now that Lest had not one, but two of the most powerful creatures at his side, he couldn't help but look ahead with excitement. With Gale and Noir by him, he felt ready to take on anything the world could throw his way. Now that they had completed their mission, Lest chose to finally return home. Since taking the dragon along in his current form wasn't possible, he decided to place him in the interdimensional space where Gale also resided. But Noir didn't seem eager to leave the forest, which reminded Lest that the R forest was full of fierce creatures and soaked in dark magic. This place constantly lured demons, drawn by the magical energy. In the game, these demons were known for their cruelty and played a big role in Lest's story. This is where Noir came in. Back then, he was the one who purified the forest's corruption and stopped the summoning of more demons. Noir had silently protected the people for so long, and now Lest understood why he couldn't just leave. So, Lest agreed to let him stay. Still, he asked Noir that if one day he needed help, he hoped the dragon would lend his power. Noir couldn't speak human words, but his quiet nod told Lest everything. That moment formed a bond between them, one that connected their lives. If danger strikes, this bond will warn them both. When that day comes, Lest is sure they'll fight side by side once again. Watching Noir soar back to his den, Lest suddenly felt his motivation drop. Still, he knew that once he tamed a few more creatures, he'd unlock summon and beast mechanics just like in the game. On their way home, he couldn't help but feel proud of himself and Gale for taming Noir. Not only did this earn him a major stat boost, but the dragon's blessing also added to his strength. On top of that, Lest had also gotten his hands on a shrink spell. Curious to try it, he tested it on Gale, and the outcome was unexpectedly adorable. With Gale now small enough to stay in the mansion, things seemed perfect. But just as they were testing the spell, a wild monster came charging toward Lest. Without warning, he was back to fending off monsters non-stop. This time, though, it wasn't just any beast. From the looks of it, this monster's power rivaled Noir's. What made it worse was its nearly unbreakable physical defense. For someone like Lest who still wielded a wooden sword, this was one of the worst kinds of opponents. He didn't want to keep fighting anymore, but there was no way to run from something this fast. Like it or not, Lest had no option left but to face it head-on. At the same time, Gale jumped in and supported his master with his own techniques. Judging by how it reacted, the monster clearly didn't handle magic very well. So, while they kept firing off intermediate spells, Lest tried to close the gap and land a blow, convinced he could deal some real damage. To his surprise, his magic felt smoother than ever, most likely thanks to the dragon's blessing. With that power backing him up, he believed he could pull it off without much trouble. Though the move was still unfamiliar, Lest performed far better than expected. In one clean strike, he landed a fatal blow, piercing straight through the creature's stomach. Both he and Gale were stunned. Neither had expected such a result. That was when Lest truly understood something important. With the sword techniques he learned from Elna, combined with the power gained from taming Gale and Noir, he now had the tools to climb to the top. If he could continue to master both magic and swordplay, then becoming the strongest warrior alive might not be just a dream. All that remained was to move forward with no hesitation. A royal visit took place at the manor, with the guests warmly received despite the sudden arrival. Formal greetings and reassurances were exchanged, and the Lord presented a ceremonial gift in welcome. Princess Charlotte, the second princess, had come to the Albion estate to fulfill her earlier promise of sword training, beginning her visit in earnest. Princess Charlotte visited specifically for this training with Lest. Though others tried to win her attention, she put their efforts aside and chose to keep her commitment to him. Lest guided her toward the large training hall, setting the stage for their practice, a sign of the closeness between them that went beyond formalities. While they prepared, Charlotte recalled what Elna had told her about Lest's duel against Edward and his partner. Deeply impressed, she openly praised his ability. Not knowing the unfairness of that fight, and with Lest choosing not to explain, Charlotte confidently declared that she had trained seriously for the last 2 weeks so she could face him properly. Lest welcomed her challenge, and at the maid's signal, the duel commenced. Charlotte struck first, her blade fast and sharp. Lest blocked her strike without effort, noticing the power behind her growing skill. As the match continued, he realized just how much Charlotte had advanced in 2 weeks. Once on par with Edward, she now surpassed him and the others, her growth extraordinary. He realized that her rapid growth reflected the natural talent of the story's main heroine. After a heated exchange, the duel was called to an end. Out of breath, Charlotte admitted her shock at the widening distance between her and Lest. Even with all her hard training, she now saw his power had grown far faster than she had imagined. Yet rather than feeling crushed, she eagerly asked to learn the training that made him this strong. Her resolve impressed Lest, but he hesitated, unable to reveal the truth about taming or his forest missions. Struggling for an excuse, he recalled a method from the game and offered it as midnight training. Charlotte, fired up to grow stronger, insisted he make it as strict as possible so she could catch up. Thus began her midnight drills: weight training, sprinting, mana control, and prayer while strapped with sandbags. Though grueling, this plan steadily raised her skills, and she pressed on with burning determination. Watching Charlotte endure with sandbags, Estella admired Lest's daily devotion to sword drills. She reminded him that being a referee was part of her duty as Charlotte's maid, but asked him to speak to her more casually, hoping to bridge the gap. Though awkward since she was older, Lest agreed to call her Estelle. Grateful, she smiled warmly at his words. Soon after, Charlotte, still buzzing with energy from training, eagerly asked what she should do next. Since their practice had ended earlier than planned, Lest considered how to use the extra time. He thought about hosting a tea party but dismissed it to avoid drawing attention. Instead, he suggested they explore the castle town. Charlotte's eyes lit up at the idea, and she quickly agreed. With that, their next outing was set. Together, the three left for the bustling streets of the castle town. When danger appeared, Estelle advised shielding the princess while another fought the monsters. But Charlotte insisted on joining the battle herself. Thinking it safer if everyone fought together, they split into 2 groups, with Lest sticking close to Charlotte to guard her. Estelle supported them firmly from the other side, while Lest and Charlotte rushed forward. Lest cut down enemies in swift strokes, drawing admiration from townsfolk who felt reassured by his strength. After clearing their side, he and Charlotte regrouped with Estelle to press the attack as one. Suddenly, a fanged tiger leapt from hiding, startling Charlotte. The beast was as strong as a mid-tier werewolf. Seeing the danger, Lest braced himself to step in. Then, another fanged tiger emerged, striking in perfect sync. Lest reacted instantly, swinging his blade with force to drive the beast back and make room. He readied his wind magic, though hesitant to expose the hidden strength he had kept secret. But before he could act, Charlotte suddenly moved ahead, summoning her own magic and leaving him in shock. With fierce resolve, she released a radiant holy arrow, striking the Fang tiger directly and halting its rush with sheer power. Lest was astonished to see how far her control had come in only 2 weeks, far beyond what he had imagined, proving her rare natural gift. Without hesitation, Charlotte unleashed a final holy strike that pierced through the monster, showing her rapid growth and courage in combat. The beast fell, and relief spread among her allies. Together, the group checked their safety while praising the princess's strength. The townsfolk cheered for Lest as their hero, grateful for his aid. Hidden within the crowd, a cloaked stranger observed, suspicious of how someone with the tame skill could wield such strength, suspecting he was hiding his true power. With a smirk, the figure left quietly, planning to investigate. Elsewhere, the Marquis recalled sending Lest into the forest's middle layers, expecting him to fail. Still, Lest returned unharmed each day, raising doubts about how someone with only a useless taming skill could pull off such feats. The Marquis was stunned when news spread that Lest and the princess had defeated the monster in town. Though glad they lived, he grew uneasy, fearing Lest's rising fame might one day expose him if trouble struck. Pressed for time and dreading the boy's growing influence, the Marquis made a choice. He planned to send Lest into the deep layers of the forest, a place so deadly that even a sword saint might perish, hoping this would finally rid him of the boy. Bitter at Lest's survival so far, he swore this time there would be no escape. Yet doubt lingered, pushing him to design a darker scheme, hiring an assassin to strike within the forest's depths, leaving no trace behind. Ranting in anger, he cursed Lest for endangering his position and convinced himself the plan could not fail. But as he plotted, a sudden voice startled him. Someone had entered unseen. A cloaked woman appeared, pointing out the flaw in his plan. Shocked that he had not noticed her, he demanded to know who she was, while she smiled and calmly proposed a new path for his scheme. The cloaked woman stepped closer to the Marquis, her presence pressing down on him until his thoughts blurred. His focus slipped away, and her will wrapped around his mind like chains. Powerless to resist, he slowly yielded, agreeing with every word she spoke without noticing the trap. With the Marquis fully under her sway, the woman declared that preparations were complete. She hinted at a hidden truth tied to Lest Albion and claimed she alone would bring it to light, all while keeping the Marquis bound to her command. The following day, Charlotte and her party ended their stay sooner than planned after the monster attack. Fearing the assault had been aimed at her, they chose to return home quickly using the teleportation circle at the church in Albion's castle town. This ancient system, found in major cities, allowed instant travel across long distances but required immense magic, so even royalty seldom used it, showing the weight of the danger. As they prepared to leave, Lest compared the circles to fast travel features in games, usually unlocked only later in the story. Before the spell activated, he encouraged Charlotte, praising how much she and her partner had improved in swordplay and magic. With a bright smile, she vowed to grow even stronger with the training method she had gained. Not long after Charlotte's departure, Lest received a summons from his father. A heavy feeling settled in his chest, for he sensed something serious awaited. His father ordered him to enter the deepest reaches of Arst Forest alone, a territory infamous for its danger. To Lest, this command was all the proof he needed of the bitter hostility his father harbored. Yet Gad masked his intent with false concern, declaring that Lest would not go unaccompanied. He arranged for a guard to join him, though the gesture only deepened Lest's suspicion. Soon after, a woman named Lav appeared, introducing herself as a B-rank adventurer tasked with serving as his protector. She had been personally appointed by Marquis Albion to accompany Lest. Lav quickly sensed his unease, but he dismissed it with a calm smile, claiming nothing was amiss. His father, cold and unyielding, insisted that Lest accept her aid in the name of safety. Cornered, Lest nodded and agreed to her escort, hiding the doubts that gnawed at him. And so, with Lav beside him, he departed toward the ominous depths of the forest. About an hour had passed since their journey began. Lest and Lav quietly made their way through the middle section of Arst Forest, their steps soft against the fallen leaves. Though the forest was calm, the air around them carried an uneasy stillness. Lest recalled how his father had claimed to hire an adventurer to guard him. And though Lav fit the description perfectly, something about her presence didn't sit right with him. Her movements were too refined, her composure too sharp for a simple escort. In truth, it made no sense for someone of her skill to be sent as his companion. There were only two reasons a person like her would be assigned to this mission, and neither of them involved keeping him safe. As they moved through the dense forest, Lest's mind wouldn't stop racing. His father's sudden kindness in assigning him a guard was suspicious from the very start. He began to think that maybe, just maybe, this whole investigation mission was nothing but a trap. One possible reason, he thought, could be that his father wanted to get rid of him quietly to make his death look like an unfortunate accident during the forest exploration. But another thought crossed his mind: perhaps this woman, Lav, wasn't here to kill him, but to watch him. After all, for someone with only a tame skill to survive in such a dangerous place was unheard of. Maybe his father had started to doubt him and sent Lav to uncover how he was really exploring the forest or what kind of power he was hiding. Lest looked at her carefully from the corner of his eye. Her expression gave away nothing, but something about her movements and the quiet confidence in her steps told him she was no ordinary adventurer. No matter what reason his father gave, one thing was certain: she wasn't just a simple guard. Lest was now sure that Lav had another hidden mission. Seeing her smile, Lest knew he had to be extra careful. He couldn't afford to reveal his true strength or his skills in front of her. Using wind magic would raise questions, and calling out Gale would expose his tame ability completely. For now, he decided to hide every bit of power he had and play the role of a harmless tamer. After all, keeping secrets was the only way to survive this journey. As they continued deeper into the forest, Lav found it strange that they hadn't encountered a single monster yet. For such a dangerous area, this silence was unusual, almost unnatural. She mentioned it aloud, her voice calm but filled with curiosity, wondering why they hadn't run into even one creature despite walking this far. Lest, however, already had a clear plan in mind. Keeping a composed tone, he replied that he was deliberately avoiding battles whenever possible. He explained that his father had only ordered him to investigate the forest, not to fight recklessly. Since there was no reason to risk their lives unnecessarily, he was moving forward with full caution, staying alert to avoid monsters at all costs. Hearing his calm and thoughtful answer, Lav smiled gently. "I see," she said, impressed by how logical and wise his approach was. Her eyes sparkled with mild admiration as she praised him, saying that his careful judgment was just what she'd expect from someone like Lest. Meanwhile, Lest stayed silent, his eyes fixed ahead. Though her tone was friendly, he couldn't shake off his suspicions, wondering whether her words were genuine or part of a facade meant to lower his guard. Just then, Lav's expression turned serious. She raised her staff slightly, her senses sharpening. "The flow of magic around us has changed," she said, her tone low and cautious. Lest immediately stopped as well, realizing that they had finally crossed into the deeper zone of the forest, a place where far stronger monsters resided. "From here on," Lav added softly, a hint of tension in her voice, "we're entering the heart of the forest." Lest nodded quietly. "Yes, I can feel it too," he replied. The air had grown heavier, and an unseen pressure now surrounded them, a clear sign that danger was near. The quietness of the deep forest felt almost unnatural. Every sound, even the soft rustle of Lav's footsteps, echoed through the trees. For a moment, it was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. "Strange," Lav whispered, looking around carefully. "We've been walking for quite some time since entering the deeper area, yet not a single monster has shown up." But before she could say more, Lest's expression changed. His instincts screamed danger. He quickly raised his hand and whispered, "Quiet." His sharp tone made Lav freeze instantly. The air had shifted, something was approaching. Peering through the gaps between the trees, Lest spotted several massive shapes moving together. "1, 2, 3, 4, he muttered quietly. There were too many of them. Judging by their size and presence, they were no ordinary monsters. "We can't fight this head-on," he thought, his body tensing. "We need to avoid them at all costs." Just then, one of the monsters stepped into view, an orc general, a mid-B rank beast and one of the most dangerous monsters in the middle layers. Its massive frame gleamed under the faint sunlight, and behind it stood its subordinates, following closely like loyal soldiers. "An orc general?" Lav whispered in disbelief, clutching her staff tightly. "No wonder the forest has been so quiet. This creature commands all the monsters around here." Lest gritted his teeth. Facing a creature of this level was no small matter even for experienced adventurers. One wrong move, and this could easily turn into a fight they wouldn't walk away from. Before they knew it, the forest was filled with growls and heavy footsteps. From behind the trees, several figures emerged, nearly 10 in total. Among them were high orcs and regular orcs, their grotesque faces twisted with rage. Each one wasn't too strong individually, maybe around D to C rank, but their numbers made them a serious threat. Standing at their lead was the orc general, radiating overwhelming bloodlust. Lest exhaled quietly, trying to stay composed. "Even without Gale, I can still fight," he whispered to himself, gripping his wooden sword tightly. "But this many at once might be tough, even for me." He knew that if he went all out, he might draw unwanted attention to his power, but at the same time, if he held back, they'd both die here. There was no way out now. "Lav," he called out firmly. "You're a magic user, right? I'll take the front line and pull their attention. While I keep them busy, look for any openings and hit them with magic from the back. Focus on precision aim for their weak points." His eyes were steady, his tone showing not fear, but confidence in his plan. Lav's lips curved into a confident smile. "Understood," she replied, her voice calm yet filled with strength. "I'll strike the moment I find an opening." The forest grew silent for a moment, the calm before the storm. Then, with a deep breath, Les stepped forward, ready to face the oncoming horde head-on. The battle had begun. The orcs let out terrifying roars as they rushed toward Lest and Lav, their weapons gleaming under the faint forest light. Dust and leaves swirled as the ground trembled from their stampede. Without hesitation, Les dashed forward to face them, his eyes sharp and focused. His wooden sword gleamed faintly as he deflected one of the orcs' heavy blows, his movements quick and precise. Despite being surrounded, Lest's calm never faltered. Each swing, each dodge, was deliberate and calculated. His movements flowed like water, smooth and controlled. "If all I need to do is keep their attention," he muttered under his breath, parrying another strike with ease, "then this will be no problem at all." Even without Gale or Noir's help, Lest's refined swordsmanship alone was enough to hold the front line against multiple enemies at once. Behind him, Lav had already begun her preparations. Her cloak fluttered as she raised her staff, gathering fire magic in her palm. "I'm ready," she called out, her voice strong and steady. The air around her shimmered as the fiery spell built up, ready to be unleashed. Lest quickly glanced back at her and nodded. "Go ahead," he said firmly. "Understood," Lav replied, her tone full of resolve as flames danced around her. The blazing orb at the tip of her staff crackled with power, illuminating the dark forest. In that instant, both of them knew their teamwork was perfectly in sync. The real battle had just begun. Lav's eyes blazed with determination as she raised her glowing staff high. The air around her shimmered with intense heat, and streams of flame twisted together into a massive fiery spear. "Here I go," she shouted, her voice echoing through the forest. In the next instant, she unleashed her spell, Fire Javelin. The flaming spear shot forward like a blazing comet, cutting through the air with unstoppable force. The trees around them trembled from the heat, and the ground scorched under its trail of fire. The javelin struck its target dead-on. A thunderous explosion followed, swallowing the orcs in a storm of flames. Their roars turned into desperate screams as the fire wrapped around their bodies, burning away their armor and strength. "Boom!" the orc general bellowed, thrashing in rage and pain as his subordinates collapsed around him. Lav's fire magic had not only hit, it had completely wiped out the orcs' front line. Even Lest couldn't help but glance back, impressed by the sheer destructive power she unleashed. As the smoke from Lav's fire spell began to fade, a heavy, guttural sound broke through the silence. From within the burning haze, the orc general emerged, his body scorched but still standing strong. The flames had seared his armor and flesh, yet his fury only seemed to grow stronger. Steam hissed from his body as he snarled, the sound echoing through the forest like thunder. This monster was far tougher than they expected, and now he was enraged. His eyes glowed a deep crimson, locking onto Lav with sheer hatred. The fire magic had only fueled his rage further. He wasn't just fighting out of instinct anymore, he wanted revenge. Lest could feel the killing intent sharp enough to pierce the air. He knew exactly what would happen next. The orc was going to charge straight for Lav. With a deafening roar, the orc general charged forward like a wild beast, his enormous blade slicing through the air with terrifying force. "Ah!" Lav gasped, her instincts kicking in too late. The sheer speed of his attack left her no room to dodge. For a moment, fear flashed in her eyes. She knew she couldn't block that strike in time. But before the blade could reach her, a voice cut through the chaos. "You took your eyes off me," Lest shouted, appearing in front of the monster in an instant. The clash of steel echoed as his wooden sword met the orc's massive blade, stopping the fatal strike just inches away from Lav. Sparks flew between them as Lest glared into the monster's furious eyes. The real fight had only just begun and Lest wasn't planning to back down. Lest let out a fierce battle cry, his voice echoing through the forest as he charged in with all his strength. His body moved like lightning, faster than the eye could follow. "Ha!" he roared, channeling every ounce of power into his strike. The wooden sword in his hands glimmered faintly, wrapped in a sharp current of wind magic that cut through the air. In a flash, Lest's strike tore through the orc general's chestplate. The impact was explosive. A gust of wind followed the slash, leaving a deep wound across the monster's torso. The creature's roar turned into a strangled cry of agony. Its sword slipped from its trembling hand as it staggered backward, the once terrifying giant now falling to its knees. With one final shudder, the orc general crashed to the ground, its massive frame shaking the earth beneath it. The forest fell silent once again. Only the faint crackling of distant fire and the rustling of leaves filled the air. Lest lowered his weapon, his eyes still sharp but calm. He didn't celebrate or boast. He simply exhaled, relieved that the fight was over. The mighty orc, once a terrifying commander of monsters, was now nothing more than a fallen shadow before Lest's quiet strength. The battle was finally over. Lav let out a long breath, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since the fight began. "You did it, Lord Lest," she said, her tone filled with admiration. "That was an incredible display of skill." Lest gave a faint smile, glancing at the fallen monster behind him. "No, I just gave it the final push," he replied modestly. "You were the one who weakened it with your magic." His calm, humble words made it seem as if defeating a monster like that was nothing at all, and that only made Lav admire him more. "You don't have to be so humble," Lav said softly, though a small smile tugged at her lips. She had fought beside many adventurers before, but there was something different about Lest, a quiet confidence that made even powerful warriors pale in comparison. Just as Lest prepared to move on, Lav's expression changed. Her smile faded, replaced by a touch of hesitation. I'm terribly sorry," she said nervously. "Would you mind if I stepped away for a moment?" Her tone was polite, but something about her voice felt strange, almost forced. Lest blinked in confusion. He couldn't understand why she wanted to leave so suddenly, especially here in the middle of the forest. But seeing her fidget nervously, he decided not to press the issue. "Of course," Lest replied finally, his voice calm but cautious. As Lav walked away, the faint light from her staff slowly faded into the shadows of the forest. Lest stood there quietly, watching her go. "So," he muttered under his breath, "that's how it is." Something about her behavior didn't sit right with him, and deep down, he knew this wasn't the end of the danger. A few minutes had passed since Lav had gone off on her own, yet she still hadn't returned. Lest sighed quietly, glancing toward the shadows of the forest. "She's been gone a while. Maybe I should go look for her," he murmured. The stillness around him felt oddly heavy, too heavy for a forest that was always alive with sound. He frowned slightly, realizing something strange. There was no sound, no rustling leaves, no chirping birds, not even the faint hum of insects. The forest, once filled with life, had gone completely silent. "This isn't right," he whispered under his breath. A cold chill ran down his spine as his instincts screamed that something was off. It wasn't just quiet, it was unnatural, like the calm before a deadly storm. The air grew thicker by the second, every sound swallowed by an invisible weight. Lest clenched his jaw, his hand tightening around his wooden sword. "Too quiet, even the birds stopped," he muttered. His heart began to race. Something was about to happen, and whatever it wasn't good. A low, rumbling sound echoed through the tree's heavy footsteps, shaking the ground beneath Lest's feet. From between the twisted trunks, a colossal figure appeared, each step leaving deep marks in the earth. It was an ogre, its towering body wrapped in ragged furs, muscles like steel, and two sharp horns gleaming under the faint light. A skull dangled from its waist like a trophy. Lest's heart pounded in his chest as he instinctively took a step back, gripping his wooden sword tightly. This wasn't just any monster, its aura was completely different, almost suffocating. "An ogre," he gasped, his voice breaking through the thick silence. But it wasn't just any ogre. The markings on its arms and the twisted skull around its neck told him exactly what it was. Why is an ogre from the Erebos' deep layer here?" he shouted in disbelief. This kind of creature wasn't supposed to appear anywhere near the middle layers. Its presence alone shattered all logic, and deep down, Lest realized this could only mean one thing: someone had lured it here. Standing before Lest was a creature feared by even veteran adventurers and a rank mid-tier monster, the mighty ogre. Aside from the black dragon itself, this beast was the most powerful creature ruling over the Arst forest. Its very presence at the top of the food chain made it a living symbol of destruction. Even the ground seemed to tremble as it took a single breath. In the original game, Lest remembered clearly ogres like this were programmed to appear only in the deepest layers of the Arst forest. Never once did they spawn this far up the surface. That's impossible, Lest muttered, his mind racing. An ogre shouldn't even exist in this area. His instincts screamed one truth: something, or someone, had broken the natural order of this world. Could this be the effect of the world shifting from the game's rules into reality? He thought, his chest tightening. Everything he knew from his past life as a player was starting to change, and this ogre's sudden appearance was proof that the boundaries between the game and this new world were beginning to blur. The question now was, if the game's monsters could appear anywhere, how long before the true horrors followed? The ogre roared and swung its massive weapon with unbelievable force. The ground exploded on impact, sending dirt and trees flying everywhere. Lest barely dodged in time, the shockwave almost knocking him off his feet. He clenched his teeth, realizing just how powerful this monster really was. One hit from that, and I'm done for, he thought, his heart racing. Damn, just as strong as I remember from the game, Lest muttered, his expression tense. This monster's power was no joke, it was exactly like the original. Up until now, the toughest foe Lest had ever beaten was a high B rank gargoyle. But this ogre, ranked in the middle of a class, was on a completely different level. The gap between them wasn't just in numbers, but in pure strength. In this world, once you reach a rank, every step higher becomes a leap in difficulty, and standing before him now was proof of that terrifying jump. The ogre's massive swing hit the ground like a thunderclap, sending a shockwave that blew Lest off his feet. Even blocking the attack felt impossible, the sheer strength difference between them was terrifying. In this world, even a single rank difference created an unbridgeable gap. Unlike the gargoyle he once faced, this ogre had no clear weakness. Its power, defense, and endurance were all perfectly balanced. Damn, there's no way to beat this thing head-on, Lest muttered, clenching his fist. He knew the truth at his current level. Fighting this monster alone was nearly impossible. Lest looked toward the trees, realizing Lav was still nowhere in sight. The forest that once buzzed with faint life now felt suffocatingly silent. The ogre's rumbling steps echoed through the woods, and Lest's pulse quickened. He knew he couldn't keep dodging forever. Normally, I'd never reveal my taming powers, he thought to himself, his expression firm. But if I keep hiding them now, this fight will be the end of me. His heartbeat steadied. The fear that once held him back turned into focus. If this secret power could save his life, then he had no choice but to use it. Come forth, Gale. His voice echoed across the forest as a familiar presence answered the call. The power he had vowed to keep hidden now unleashed once again. From the blinding glow of the magic circle, Gale emerged massive, fierce, and wild as a storm. His roar split the silence of the forest, shaking even the trees to their roots. Running beside him, Lest's eyes burned with resolve. The fear he once felt was gone, replaced only by determination. There's no time to waste, he shouted, gripping his sword tightly. We end this now together. With that, master and beast surged forward as one, ready to strike down the monster that stood before them. The ogre charges once more with overwhelming power, smashing the ground as it comes at him. This time, however, Gale calmly dodges the attack, moving smoothly while preparing a counter of his own. With perfect timing, Gale releases a cyclone blast straight into the ogre's face. Even after taking such a heavy hit, the monster barely reacts, proving just how terrifying a rank beast truly is. In the next moment, the ogre strikes back and sends him flying into the air. Instead of feeling afraid, he lets out a confident grin, already seeing this as his chance. While still airborne, he calls out to Gale to attack. Gale rushes forward and sinks his fangs into the ogre, catching it completely off guard. Still, even that isn't enough, and Gale realizes this fight won't end easily. As expected, the ogre's body is extremely durable, constantly strengthened by dense magic that weakens both physical and magical attacks unless they carry immense force. Understanding this, he knows there's no choice but to go all out. He charges forward with everything he has, swinging his blade with full strength as Gale attacks from the side. Pouring all his power into the strike, he confronts the ogre head-on and unleashes Wind Slash at point-blank range. The violent blast tears into the ogre's chest, finally forcing the monster to stagger back in pain. The ogre roars loudly as the wind rips through its body, just as he predicted, strong enough to pierce its reinforced defenses. Now wounded and shaken, the ogre begins to lose balance. Driven mad by pain and rage, it goes berserk and smashes the ground with all its might, turning its full attention toward him. He quickly realizes that the ogre's attention is now locked entirely on him, giving him a small but important chance to take control of the battle. The monster completely ignores Gale, clearly believing he is no longer a threat. He admits that this would have been a smart decision if Gale truly couldn't hurt it, but that mistake is about to cost the ogre dearly. He calls out, warning the ogre not to look down on Gale. At that exact moment, Gale attacks with full power, striking from the side and catching the ogre completely off guard in an attempt to shift the fight. The ogre reacts in shock as Gale closes in. That's when he reveals the truth. Gale can also coat himself in wind and use wind slash. The ogre never expected that. He explains that even though Gale's wind slash isn't fully refined yet, it is still more than dangerous enough. With a confident grin, he mocks the ogre, making it clear that Gale can no longer be ignored. Enraged and now fully aware of the danger, the ogre lets out a thunderous roar and launches into a wild, reckless attack. Seeing this, he praises Gale for changing the flow of the battle. The ogre's mistake was focusing only on him and treating Gale as harmless, and that error now makes the fight far easier to manage. With Gale capable of dealing real damage, the battle completely shifts. Forced to split its attention between two enemies, the ogre's fighting ability drops sharply, and it's pushed onto the defensive. Seizing the moment, he charges forward boldly with a confident smirk, challenging the ogre head-on. While Gale pressures it from behind, the monster is forced to question which of them is the real threat. Cornered between two relentless attackers, the ogre begins to panic. With perfect timing, he leaps in to finish the fight, ready to strike together with Gale at his side. Now confident that the advantage is finally theirs, he prepares to show the monster who truly controls the fight. Moving in perfect harmony, both he and Gale activate wind coating at the same time, pushing their power to its absolute limit. This is their finishing move. Their coordinated attack lands cleanly. Gale lunges forward and sinks his fangs deep, while he slashes through with full force. The ogre is left stunned, blood spilling as its massive body staggers backward, unable to stay upright. As the battle ends, a system message appears before his eyes. Wind slash has leveled up, and his taming limit has increased, meaning he can now tame one more creature. With a satisfied smile, he praises Gale for the incredible teamwork. Now able to control up to 3 monsters, he realizes he's already accomplished what he came to the forest for. With no remaining enemies here worth targeting, his thoughts shift to what comes next. One of the creatures he had tamed earlier was Noir, a key part of his original plan since being reborn as Lest. He reflects on how Gale was never part of that plan, yet turned out to be an amazing outcome. While the ogre would have been a powerful addition, it's no longer an option now that it's been slain. Still, he knows there are even more important monsters he must focus on in the future. As he considers his next step, a problem comes to mind. The creatures he wants to tame aren't anywhere near Albion territory, and explaining everything to Gad would be nearly impossible. Just as he's thinking this through, Gale suddenly senses something approaching. Moments later, Lav rushes back after feeling the intense battle from afar. She freezes in shock at the sight of the ogre's corpse, immediately realizing how massive the fight must have been. Her expression makes it clear she never imagined such a dangerous monster was nearby. Seeing the fallen a rank ogre, Lav assumes he defeated it on his own. He quickly downplays it, saying the monster was already badly injured and he only delivered the final blow. Lav studies the deep claw marks left on the ogre's body and accepts his explanation, while he quietly watches her reaction. She assumes that an even stronger monster must still be somewhere nearby, one powerful enough to nearly kill an A-rank ogre. Worried, she suggests they stop the investigation for the day, and he agrees without hesitation. Just as they are about to leave, Lav suddenly stops him and hands him something, asking him to wait a moment. She offers him a fatigue recovery potion, claiming it's for his own safety. Trusting her, he drinks it without a second thought. Almost instantly, his body starts to feel strange. Something is clearly wrong. Lav lets out a cold laugh, finally dropping the act. She reveals the truth: the potion was mixed with paralysis poison. Mocking him, she calls him foolish for trusting her so easily. Unable to move and overwhelmed with shock, he can only listen as she reveals her true purpose. Lav declares her real identity: Reeb, one of the Demon King's army executives. With a confident smile, she announces that she plans to kill him herself. As he struggles helplessly on the ground, Reeb ridicules him, asking how the poison tastes and cruelly joking about whether his parents ever taught him not to accept drinks from strangers. Convinced she has already won, she mocks his parents as well, sneering that they failed to teach him even basic caution. She then reveals the full truth: every monster attack, including the ogre, was orchestrated by her from the very beginning. It was all a trap designed to test and observe his hidden power. Reeb admits she had been watching him closely and confirms that he used a monster to defeat the ogre, just as she suspected. She teasingly hints at why he caught her interest, but stops short of explaining, choosing instead to savor the moment. With a smug grin, Reeb continues to mock Lest as he lies paralyzed and helpless before her. She coldly tells him to curse his bad luck, making it clear she has no intention of sparing his life. Just moments ago, Lest was completely paralyzed, yet suddenly he rises to his feet and speaks in a calm, steady voice. Reeb freezes in disbelief, her confident expression cracking as she realizes something has gone terribly wrong. Panic flashes across her face when she sees him moving freely. Lest then reveals the truth without a hint of fear: he was never paralyzed at all. In that instant, Reeb's certainty collapses as she understands she has been tricked. Lest explains the source of his immunity: the dragon's blessing. Because of it, he is resistant to status effects like paralysis, and also possesses far greater control over magic. He casually admits that he never would have drunk the potion if he hadn't been sure of this protection. Reeb burns with frustration as she realizes her entire plan has failed. Lest then drops another bombshell: he knew who Reeb truly was from the very beginning. He intentionally went along with her act and ventured deep into the forest to draw her out and expose her. Furious and shaken, Reeb insists her plan was perfect, and that no ordinary human could have seen through it. But Lest silences her rant with a quiet, heavy remark, hinting that his existence goes far beyond what she understands. He speaks of events from 1,000 years ago, when a massive war between humans and demons consumed the world. At first, the Demon King stood victorious, until a hero and a divine dragon appeared and reversed the tide of battle. Just before being sealed away, the Demon King made one final move. He shattered his soul into 10 fragments and sent them far into the future, preparing for a final confrontation long after his defeat. Lest Albion then reveals the hidden truth: the Demon King's soul fragments were scattered and reborn inside random newborns across time. The demon army's true goal is to collect these scattered fragments and bring their king back to life. Lest himself carries one of those fragments, the very thing that awakened his hidden power and turned what was once seen as a worthless skill into the ability to command monsters. He explains that Reeb also holds a fragment, and that using the ogre was her way of confirming it. She angrily accuses him of trying to steal her fragment for himself. Lest calmly clears the misunderstanding, explaining that the poison was never meant to kill her, only to paralyze her. If she died, the fragment could disappear along with her. With a cold tone, he adds that among the Demon King's executives, Reeb is actually one of the weakest. Those words hit her hard, making her tremble with anger and humiliation. Unable to hide her panic anymore, Reeb demands to know how he could possibly know all of this, her voice shaking. Lest, standing calmly while power radiates from him, simply answers that it's obvious he would know, leaving her completely stunned. He then reveals the real reason behind his knowledge. In the game's original story, Reeb was the one who killed him. Even though she now calls herself Lav, he recognized her instantly. From the very beginning, he held back his urge to confront her, waiting patiently for the right moment. In that original timeline, Reeb stole the Demon King's soul fragment from Lest and absorbed it, gaining a temporary rise to S-rank power and enhanced abilities. But her body couldn't withstand such overwhelming energy. In the end, the fragment tore her apart, killing her in a violent explosion. Although she succeeded in killing Lest and stealing his fragment, her death erased it completely, weakening the Demon King's future revival. Strangely enough, after her dramatic end, Reeb became unexpectedly popular in fanfiction, even earning the nickname Smithereens-chan. To Lest, these memories now feel distant and almost nostalgic. But for Reeb, the depth of his knowledge is deeply unsettling, far beyond what any ordinary person should ever know. When she demands answers, Lest simply shrugs it off, telling her that it's nothing more than her bad luck. Enraged by his calm response, Reeb snaps and decides she'll force the truth out of him through torture, showing no mercy at all. Burning with anger, she releases her full power and activates her unique skill, Transition Magic. However, she's immediately thrown off balance when Lest calmly reveals that he already knows about her ability. This only fuels her rage further. Reeb unleashes her magic without holding back, launching into a full-scale attack. Lest braces himself, realizing the fight has finally turned serious. Even though he stayed calm earlier, Reeb's strength as a true executive class threat demands his full focus. Her power rivals that of a high-rank enemy. While she may not overpower him physically, her special ability makes her far more dangerous than the ogre he just defeated. In a sudden strike, Reeb overwhelms him, sending him flying through the air before he can react. Her transition magic allows her to turn raw magic into physical weapons like blades, then erase them instantly at will. The magic she uses is so deadly that direct contact without protection would tear his body apart in seconds. Even with its limits, her power remains extremely dangerous. Lest quickly realizes he can't win this battle on his own. He summons Gale to fight beside him, but Reeb remains unfazed, already preparing her next move. Mocking his summon, she releases a storm of magical blades, making it clear she won't fall easily. Lest knows the only way to win is to get close, but with Reeb's lethal magic surrounding her, taking that risk could cost him everything. He quickly warns Gale to keep moving and avoid getting hit at all costs. In this fight, surviving means dodging every attack rather than trying to endure them. Reeb grows irritated by how carefully he reads her movements and plans his actions. With a calm smile, he answers her irritation confidently, saying he takes it as a compliment. Reeb then steps forward and fires several magical spears at incredible speed. A storm of glowing weapons pours down around them. Fighting side by side with Gale, he struggles just to keep up, barely blocking and dodging the endless attacks. It becomes clear to him that staying at a distance will never lead to victory. If he wants to win, he has to get close. Understanding this, he gives Gale a quick signal. The beast rushes straight at Reeb, surprising her and forcing her to react. Confident in herself, Reeb easily deflects Gale's attack, believing it poses no real threat. But in that instant, he slips in from behind, catching her completely off guard. She's shocked that he would close the distance, even knowing how deadly her power is. Yet he moves without hesitation, trusting that as long as he avoids direct contact, he still has a chance. Remembering his training with Elna, he shifts his focus to speed instead of raw strength. He attacks non-stop, slashing again and again without giving Reeb time to respond. Stunned by the sudden change, Reeb notices how different his fighting style has become. Under the constant pressure, she's forced back step by step. Remaining calm, he carefully watches her movements. As their blades clash, he realizes her true threat lies in the strange ability she relies on so heavily. Reeb understands that if she can keep the fight at close range, she still has a chance to win. She tries to block and counter quickly, but he keeps pushing forward, driving her into defense with Gale attacking alongside him. Suddenly, magical swords begin raining down from above. He immediately warns Gale, and the beast reacts just in time, shielding both of them from the deadly strike. Even after being forced back, Reeb stands up again, refusing to accept defeat. Her presence flares as she gathers her power, preparing to release yet another wave of sword magic, proving she's nowhere near finished. She rushes forward with crushing pressure, claiming that any ordinary mage would already be helpless at such close range. Caught off guard by her sudden advance, the boy steadies himself. Without even chanting, Reeb floods the area with high-volume magic, showing off her terrifying combat style. Still, he keeps his cool, telling Gale to continue attacking while carefully staying out of her reach. Now that the fight is this close, a single mistake could end it all. Slowly, Reeb begins to lose her advantage. Despite her immense magic, the strain starts to show, and her control begins to slip under the constant pressure. Sensing this, the boy keeps pushing, patiently waiting for the right moment. He finally casts Cyclone, but Reeb scoffs, mocking him for using magic in her own domain. To her, it's a foolish choice. Then, without warning, he follows up with Blast not to deal damage, but to create a thick cloud of smoke. Caught by surprise, Reeb realizes she's lost sight of him. Working together in perfect timing, he and Gale move as one. At his signal, Gale leaps forward to attack. Just as quickly, the boy shouts for Gale to pull back when he senses danger. Reeb begins casting a far more dangerous spell. A blinding light bursts around her as she calmly announces its name, Ultimate Transition Coding. Both he and Gale freeze, instantly realizing this isn't a normal attack. This is something on a completely different level. Reeb releases her full presence, standing calm and unshaken, overflowing with power. Watching closely, the boy narrows his eyes, already understanding what's coming. "Queen of magic power," he mutters under his breath. As the wind grows violent and the pressure in the air intensifies, he realizes she's finally using her strongest ability. Reeb enters her final state, the Queen of Magic Power, releasing every ounce of magic stored within her body. The moment he senses it, he knows exactly what it is. This is the same ultimate move she used in the game. The air trembles under the sheer force of her magic, making it clear she's holding nothing back. Reeb steps forward, wrapped in terrifying power. Her body is now covered in the armor of annihilation, a form that converts anything it touches into raw magical energy. This isn't just her last transformation, it's her ultimate trump card. The battle has entered its most dangerous stage. With a confident smirk, Reeb admits she's impressed she was forced to use this power against him. But lest Albion understands that this moment is his only real chance. He fires Arrow Burst, a high-level wind spell, trying to stop her before she can fully dominate the fight. Even facing her overwhelming power, he refuses to retreat. Reeb casually deflects the attack and mocks him for aiming straight at her face. At that moment, Lest realizes brute magic alone won't be enough to defeat her. In her Queen of Magic Power state, she is nearly untouchable. No ordinary magic can break through. Both Lest and Gale know that even a single touch now would mean instant death. In the game, this form always ended in self-destruction once it fused with the Demon King's soul fragment. If she loses control here, everything around them could be erased. However, despite activating her strongest form, Lest quickly notices a flaw. She hasn't obtained the Demon King's soul fragment yet. Without that power boost, her strength is lower than it was in the game, and simply maintaining this form rapidly drains her magic and stamina. Seeing this, Lest spots his chance. He doesn't need to overpower her, he just needs to survive longer and strike at the right moment. As Reeb charges toward him at full speed, Lest reacts instantly. He coats his legs in swirling wind and activates body enhancement, boosting his movement to the limit. Using wind magic to lightly lift himself, he gains a clear edge in speed, barely staying ahead of her attacks. Lest focuses on keeping his distance, relying on agility, but Reeb sneers at his tactic and calls it pointless. Without warning, she unleashes a fierce barrage of magic, the sheer power and speed nearly overwhelming him. Lest quickly realizes her attacks take the form of whips created from the armor of annihilation. If even one of them touches him, it would be the same as direct contact, instant death. Trusting in his growing strength, Lest pushes his wind magic further and manages to deflect the incoming strikes. Reeb is visibly surprised that her power was blocked so easily, but she quickly regains her composure and warns him that luck alone won't save him. She follows up with an even heavier wave of attacks. Caught off guard, Lest immediately calls out to Gale for help, telling him to endure. As the attacks close in, Gale shrinks his body to dodge more easily. Even so, Lest is sent flying back by the pressure. Gritting his teeth, he forces himself to keep dodging, refusing to give up. As he moves, his mind stays sharp. He remembers that Reeb's Queen of Magic Power form consumes her magic rapidly and slowly damages her body. All he needs to do is survive until she reaches her limit. As the battle drags on, her stamina and magic visibly decline. Lest knows they can't afford a single mistake, now it's a test of endurance, and whoever collapses first will lose. Unable to counterattack yet, Lest and Gale keep moving non-stop, searching for even the smallest opening while Reeb watches them closely. She mocks him, telling him to surrender, but Lest refuses to give in. Both sides are worn out, breathing heavily as they face each other amid the ruined forest. Neither is willing to step back. With a cruel smile, Reeb taunts him again, saying she still needs to retrieve the Demon King's soul fragment, and that holding back enough not to kill him has been nothing but a hassle. She sneers at him, saying he no longer has any strength left to fight. Even though he's clearly exhausted, the man calmly responds that she isn't much better herself. Reeb admits she's tired too, but confidently claims that what little strength she has left is more than enough to finish him off in his current weakened state. She mocks him, saying all he did was endure and wait for her magic to run dry, yet it never truly did. With pride, she declares the overwhelming gap between them and makes it clear she believes herself to be far superior. Quietly, the man accepts that her words aren't wrong. From the beginning, the outcome of this battle was already set. He carefully evaluates the situation and realizes that while he and Gale are nearly out of magic, Reeb still has a large reserve left. If she launches another full attack, they wouldn't survive it. Even so, despite his exhaustion and the hopeless odds, he clings to a small but steady resolve. As the tension thickens, he calmly states that everything has finally fallen into place. He then asks Reeb one last question. Feeling confident and amused, she agrees to hear him out, saying she's in a good mood anyway. The man reminds her of what he said earlier, that he had seen through her plans from the very beginning and deliberately guided events to reach this exact moment. Reeb admits that he was right, finding it both irritating and impressive. Curious, she asks why he chose to explain his plan now instead of attacking her sooner. He answers that once he discovered her true identity, he could have tried a surprise attack, but chose not to. Letting things unfold naturally was far more useful for his strategy. He explains that if Reeb had noticed her disadvantage earlier, she would have immediately switched to defense and escaped, making it impossible for him to defeat her. Instead, he deliberately drew her in, revealing that his true goal all along was to lure her into their territory. Confused, Reeb asks what he means by territory, assuming he's just talking about knowing the area better, and dismisses it as unimportant. The man calmly corrects her, telling her she's completely missing the real issue. He reminds her of how he avoided paralysis earlier, hinting that it wasn't luck or chance, but something planned long before a truth she still hasn't grasped. Reeb yells in frustration, brushing off his words and claiming that resistance to poison or paralysis means nothing. But when he answers her calmly, her body freezes in shock. He reveals that the real reason he resisted wasn't a countermeasure at all, but a divine blessing. Standing beside his enormous companion, the man smirks with confidence and says the demon army should already know very well what kind of power such a blessing carries. Reeb's eyes widen as the truth begins to sink in. He explains that this blessing came from the strongest being that rules over this land, a power far beyond anything she ever imagined. Panic takes hold of Reeb as she shouts that what he's saying is impossible. Yet deep down, she knows there is only one being capable of granting such an overwhelming blessing, and the horrifying realization slowly dawns on her. Suddenly, an immense aura floods the battlefield, shaking the ground and pushing everything aside. Reeb stares in disbelief as the crushing presence confirms her fear. Her body trembles as she mutters in denial, unable to accept the reality before her. Instinctively, she raises her guard just as a massive shadow descends from the sky. When she recognizes it, terror fills her eyes. It's the Black Dragon. The man smiles coldly, welcoming its arrival as his true trump card is finally revealed. Reeb freezes in pure fear as the Black Dragon's face lowers right in front of her. His voice echoes without mercy, declaring that she has stepped into the Black Dragon's territory, a place where escape no longer exists. Reeb stands completely frozen, unable to speak as the enormous Black Dragon descends right in front of her. The man looks up with quiet pride, noticing how Noir has grown from 10 meters to nearly 15 since the day he first tamed it, clear proof that their bond and shared power have deepened. His thoughts drift back to the moment Reeb approached him while pretending to be the adventurer Lav, hiding her true intentions behind a friendly face. He had seen through her act from the very beginning and decided to turn her own scheme against her. From that point on, he made up his mind to deal with her personally. Letting her escape was never an option, as that would have led to the worst possible outcome. If Reeb managed to flee and report his unique taming ability to the demon army, he would be placed at a serious disadvantage. Knowing he still lacked the strength to face the army's top commanders, he concluded that defeating Reeb here and now was the only way to prevent that future. He remembers how, in the game, Reeb only made her move after all of his tamed monsters were gone, showing how cautious she truly was. She never fought unless she was certain of victory. Her official profile even described her as proud but extremely careful, with a strong desire to survive, and he used that knowledge to predict her actions. When the ogre attacked earlier, he already knew it was part of Reeb's plan, yet he chose to play along. Instead of escaping or summoning Noir to end the fight instantly, he faced the ogre using only Gale, barely winning the battle. That struggle was no accident, it was a deliberate act meant to deceive Reeb and build her false confidence. He revealed just enough of his taming power to make her believe she had seen everything he could do. Meanwhile, she secretly prepared paralysis poison as a backup, carefully drawing her into a trap fueled by her own overconfidence. Certain she could crush him, Reeb walked straight into his trap. Just as he planned, she revealed her true identity and challenged him head-on. Without hesitation, she released her ultimate form, the Queen of Magic Power. Yet every move she made played out exactly as he had predicted. With his knowledge of the game's mechanics and her careful personality, he had been guiding the entire battle from the very beginning. Ever since the ogre appeared, he had already seen this ending coming and set 2 more traps in advance. Through the bond created by taming, he secretly called for Noir's help long before the fight even started. The black dragon waited in silence, completely hiding its presence until the perfect moment arrived. Every step he took, every calculated decision, led to this single instant defeating Reeb once and for all, right here and now. Calmly, the man looks up and tells Reeb that the black dragon standing before her is his tamed beast. Stunned, she can only stare in disbelief, unable to accept that someone could command such an overwhelming creature. With fierce determination in his eyes, the man lifts his sword and declares that if Reeb calls herself the Queen of Magic Power, then he will face her as the King of Magic Power. Raising his voice, he calls out to Noir, ordering the black dragon to unleash its true strength. A dark, swirling vortex spreads as the dragon activates the armor of annihilation. Reeb stares in pure horror, screaming in disbelief as the unstoppable force of destruction begins to swallow everything in front of her. She struggles desperately, her magic crashing violently against the dragon's overwhelming power. Even as she fights back, she can't accept what she's seeing, that a mere human could command such a terrifying dragon. Pouring all her strength into resistance, Reeb pushes back with everything she has, her magic flaring wildly. But panic quickly fills her eyes as her spells start to break apart under the crushing pressure. As the fight slips further beyond her control, she mutters in shock, unable to believe this was never how things were supposed to end.